All right, so let's go ahead and get started with part 3 of the Unit 8 Jeopardy podcast answer review session. We're going to start with question 12. All of the following are true about Geneva Accords Peace Treaty except A. Led to division of Vietnam into two separate official countries at the 38th parallel. Now the lie within this answer is the fact that Vietnam was divided at the 38th parallel. If we remember, the 38th parallel divided Korea. The parallel that divides Vietnam was the 17th parallel. So even though it's true that the Geneva Accords Peace Treaty did officially divide Vietnam into two separate countries, it divided them at the 17th parallel, not the 38th. Question number 13, all of the following are true about the 1956 Vietnamese reunification elections except. The answer is C. The Vietnam War was the result of Ho Chi Minh winning these elections and the U.S. doing everything in its power to get rid of him. Now, if we remember, when Vietnam was officially divided, within the Geneva Accords Peace Treaty, the people of Vietnam were promised they would be able to have elections, and these elections would allow them to either unite the country as a communist country or unite the country as a capitalist country. Now, what is false about statement C is that Ho Chi Minh actually won these elections. If we remember, these elections were never allowed to take place. Because these elections were not allowed to take place, that is part of the reason why the Vietnam War started. If we remember, many of the Vietnamese, specifically the Vietnamese in the north, who were within the communist section, were very upset that the elections were not held. It was very obvious to everyone that Ho Chi Minh would most likely win these elections, and so upset over the fact that the promised elections were not held, that is one of the reasons why the Vietnam War started. So it is false that Ho Chi Minh actually won these elections. That is not true. Let's take a look at number 14. All of the following are true about Cold War Cuba except. The answer is A. Upon realizing how unpopular he was, the U.S. trained exiles to assassinate the capitalist leader Fulgencio Batista during the Bay of Pigs invasion. Now, it's true that he was very unpopular amongst his people, right? He was a capitalist, but he was a dictator, and so many of the Cubans did not like him. However, the U.S. trained exiles against Fulgencio Batista during the Bay of Pigs invasion? That is false. This should say Fidel Castro. The U.S. trained exiles to assassinate the communist leader, Fidel Castro, during the Bay of Pigs invasion. They would not send an assassination attempt against Fulgencio Batista because Fulgencio Batista was their capitalist ally. Number 15, all of the following are true about the Bay of Pigs invasion except. The lie is D, illustrated that the U.S. would do anything in order to get the missiles taken out of Turkey ASAP. If we remember, the Bay of Pigs invasion dealt with the assassination attempt on Fidel Castro. The Bay of Pigs invasion was not directed necessarily towards the missiles in Turkey. And why would the United States want the missiles taken out of Turkey? The missiles in Turkey were facing the Soviet Union. The missiles in Turkey were supposed to put pressure on the Soviet Union. The United States would not want to take that pressure away. The United States wants to keep the missiles in Turkey, to keep pressure on the Soviet Union. And so this is false because the Bay of Pigs invasion has nothing to do with Turkey, has nothing to do with those missiles. The Bay of Pigs invasion is focused on the assassination of Fidel Castro, and the United States wants to keep the missiles in Turkey. That is the way that they are controlling or trying to have some control over the Soviet Union, with those missiles placed there during the containment plan known as Truman Doctrine. Let's take a look at number 16. All of the following are true about Korea before the Cold War except. Kim Il-sung became the capitalist leader of South Korea, who was supported by the United States. Now, this is just a question where you have to know who is the communist leader and who is the capitalist leader. Kim Il-sung is not the capitalist leader. Kim Il-sung is the communist leader during the Korean War conflict. And so this is a lie because of the leader's name placed here. Number 17, all of the following are true about the Korean War except B, the war started when the South led an invasion on the North. Again, for this question, you just have to know the events of history. The Korean War starts when the North invades down into the South. Okay, we know that there had been lots of border skirmishes, lots of border disputes between communist North Korea and capitalist South Korea. And so these disputes had kind of led to a little bit of fighting breaking out along the 38th parallel. But ultimately, it's the North under Kim Il-sung which starts the war by invading the South. All right, question number 18. All of the following are true about Cold War China except the answer is B. The two opposing governments in China never tried to work together by creating a coalition government. If you remember back to the China notes, there became in China this tension over communism and capitalism, and ultimately there were kind of two governments within China that were created. One of those governments was a capitalist government led by Chiang Kai-shek, and the other government was a communist government led by Mao Zedong. Now, although these two governments are drastically different, these two governments at first did try to kind of come together to create what's known as a coalition government. A coalition government is where you have different parts of the government or different governments or different people try to come together. They try to unite as one to kind of work out how the country should be ran. Now, even though the communists under Mao Zedong and the capitalists under Chiang Kai-shek, even though these two Chinese governments did try to come together, unfortunately, they didn't really get anything done. Communism and capitalism were so drastically different that even though they tried to come together to make a coalition government, those efforts ultimately fell apart. So B is the lie because they never tried to work together. That is false. They did try. It just didn't work out. All right, so that brings us to the end of the Unit 8 review for your end of year exam. If you noticed, the Unit 8 review was much longer than Units 5, 6, and 7. The reason being is because a much larger chunk of your final exam is going to focus on Unit 8. So I wanted to give you more practice with the Unit 8 material. Please keep in mind that a lot of the questions within Unit 8 were compare and contrast Venn diagrams. If you got any one of those options in the Venn diagram wrong, you automatically get the entire question wrong. Go ahead and go through your answers, a total of 18 answers, and give me a number correct over 18. If you scored 18 through 16 correct, you're at an A. 15 through 13, you're at a B. 12 to 10, you're at a C. 9 to 7, you're at a D. And 6 or below places you at an F. If you scored a D or F, you should really consider reviewing all of your Unit 8 notes on the Cold War in order to really bring yourself up to speed on the concepts. Remember that these 18 questions cover the key concepts, people, ideas, and themes that you should have mastered in order to get a passing score for your final exam. This concludes our end of year Jeopardy podcast answer review session. Please feel free to go back and visit any of the podcast sessions for this review if you need additional information or additional help with a certain question or concept. Make sure that you do continue to study. Your final exam will be fairly lengthy.